As the aspirations of the Emperor hung tantalizingly close to realization, the Great Crusade would conclude in a manner that was both catastrophic and utterly unfathomable. The Imperial Warmaster Horus Lupercal, once regarded as the Emperor's most esteemed gene son, succumbed to the insidious allure of the Chaos Gods. Lured by the promises of unfathomable power, in his fall, Horus sought to rally his brother Primarchs to his Dark Crusade. Amongst these Primarchs which he sought out the most was Sanguinius, who had fought valiantly alongside Horus on numerous campaigns. Their bond was so profound that it occasionally would spark envy amongst their brothers. Yet in the depths of his corrupted heart, Horus knew and understood that Sanguinius would never willingly betray their father, the Emperor. Thus Horus devised an audacious plan to either sway the Blood Angels' entire legion to his side or annihilate them in one fell swoop. This nefarious plot was rooted in a revelation Horus had encountered decades earlier during the brutal xenocidal campaigns on the world of Melchior. There, in the shadowy recesses of a fallen alien chapel, Horus would stumble upon a harrowing scene. Sanguinius, in a moment of desperation, had slain one of his own sons. This revelation left Horus aghast, but Sanguinius offered an explanation that would haunt them both for years to come. He revealed that within his own genetic makeup resided a latent flaw, a darkness in the blood, waiting to be awakened, later known as the Red Thirst. For years, Sanguinius had harbored this secret, carefully concealing it from the Emperor and his fellow Primarchs. While some Blood Angels had gleaned fragments of this truth, only a select few, in particular Ascalon and 1st Captain Raldoron, along with the 9th Legion's Master Apothecary, understood the full extent of this affliction. United by a common goal, they sought out a remedy for what was referred to as the flaw. In that critical moment, Horus pledged to Sanguinius that he would not disclose this sensitive information to anyone, not even their father if asked directly by him. He vowed to uphold this promise for as long as Sanguinius wished, a gesture that deeply moved the angel. Horus in turn vowed to assist Sanguinius in confronting this insidious flaw. For whatever the duration of their struggle was, he told them he would be at their side. Unbeknownst to them, this bond would soon be exploited, as the corrupted Horus would ultimately wield the knowledge of the Blood Angel's flaw against them in his conniving pursuit of power. The Cygnus campaign loomed on the horizon, now casting an ominous and dark storm over the Imperium, as brother would turn against brother, and the fate of the galaxy hung perilously in the balance. The conflict that would follow would not only test their strength, but the very fabric of their loyalty, forever altering the course of history within the Imperium of Man. As the first echoes of the Horus Heresy began to break out, and the galaxy was on the brink of true chaos, the Blood Angels had remained steadfast in their unwavering loyalty to the Emperor. This dedication was exemplified during the harrowing events of the Cygnus campaign between 004 and 009 M31. In what would be a campaign fought with peril and deception at every turn. Horus, the once great Primarch, was now a traitorous warmaster who harbored a powerful animosity towards Sanguinius, the noble leader of the Blood Angels, in part due to the Chaos Gods seemingly wanting the angel as much, if not more so, than they wanted him. It was said that Horus feared Sanguinius more than any of his other brothers, devising numerous schemes aimed at either ensnaring or destroying him. Each attempt, however, would ultimately fail, that is until the climax of the heresy. In a calculated effort to undermine the loyalist forces, Horus tasked Sanguinius and the Blood Angels Legion, under the guise of still being loyal, with a formidable assignment: to purge the Cygnus cluster, a complex system of 3 stars situated in Segmentum Ultima, near the galaxy center. The objective was rather clear: cleanse the 7 worlds and 15 moons of Xenos invaders and liberate the humans subjugated by their alien overlords. Unbeknownst to Sanguinius, who remained unaware of his brother's treachery, he accepted this charge and set his legion in motion, in part due to Horus having promised that he had found a potential cure for the flaw within the Cygnus cluster. However, the Blood Angels had been unknowingly marching towards a deadly ambush, as the Cygnus cluster had almost completely fallen under the influence of their ruinous powers, transforming it into a nightmarish realm of chaos and dismay. A system dominated by the horrific demon worlds, ruled by one of the most powerful greater demons of Slaanesh, known as Kyrus the Perverse. Upon the Blood Angels' arrival, their fleet was immediately assaulted by malevolent forces of the warp, resulting in the catastrophic losses of their navigators and astropaths during the initial barrage. This marked the first time the Blood Angels were ever truly to encounter chaos and feel its wrath. In a show of defiance, Kyrus projected his image before Sanguinius, proclaiming his dominion over the system in the name of Slaanesh, and challenged the Primarch to reclaim it. Undaunted by this threat, the Blood Angels prepared to counterattack. Confident in their martial prowess, they launched a series of assaults against Kyrus' demonic host, targeting the epicenter of the greater demon's power upon Cygnus Prime. Sanguinius emerged as an angel of vengeance, rallying his forces with a wrath heretofore unseen in the Imperium, against a tide of human cultists and grotesque demonic entities. The surface of the planet soon became drenched in the blood of both loyalist space marines and the countless cultists serving Kyrus, along with the ichor of the demons that had been slain. As the Blood Angels pressed forward, Sanguinius aimed to confront Kyrus at the Cathedral of the Mark, the stronghold of the greater demon. However, in a fateful twist of fate, he faced an even graver threat, Kabanda, a greater demon of Khorne, one of his most powerful, at times comparable to even Skarbrand. Renowned within the pantheon of blood as one of his most fearsome avatars, Kabanda was the embodiment of destruction, reveling in the chaos of slaughter. The Demon Lord taunted Sanguinius, revealing that Horus's treachery was what had cost him so many of his sons in this campaign, igniting a fiery rage within the Primarch. Infuriated by the demon's derision and the truth of its claims, Sanguinius engaged Kabanda in single combat. In a display of ferocity and skill, Sanguinius was able to pierce the bloodthirster through the heart with his sword, inflicting a grievous wound upon the beast. Yet the battle would quickly turn against him, as Kabanda retaliated with brutal force and efficiency, ensnaring Sanguinius with his whip and slamming him to the ground with the blunt edge of his axe. As Sanguinius lay there momentarily incapacitated, Kabanda unleashed a wave of devastation across the battlefield, slaying 500 Space Marines in a single stroke. Now, for most other Primarchs, this would be a source of anger but no real physical injury. But it just so happens Sanguinius was the second most psychically adept Primarch, second only to Magnus the Red, and had a particularly strong psychic connection with his sons. So upon this act, the psychic backlash from this slaughter overwhelmed Sanguinius and temporarily rendered him unconscious. The blood-soaked conflict persisted, and in the aftermath of the Primarch's temporary fall, the Blood Angels were consumed with a primal rage, plunging headlong into the throngs of demons with a reckless abandon and fury that even gave the demons of Khorne pause, as their fury had become a force of nature, obliterating the demonic hordes before them in a manner not even Kabanda had expected. Yet in this unabashed violence, the Blood Angels awakened the first echoes of something dark within their bloodline, a relentless thirst for blood and rage that could not be satisfied until every vestige of chaos was eradicated from Cygnus Prime. With the combined efforts of the entirety of the remaining Blood Angel librarians who had disregarded the Emperor's edict, the Great Angel was reawakened, and what followed would go as such. "My lord," Kano whispered, afraid to believe it, as he reached out to touch the Primarch's arm. This was no vision, as his fingers met the sun-warmed ceramite. For a moment the greatest sadness weighed the angel's partitioned face. "You gave so much to bring me back, my son. You paid a high cost. We did what we thought was right." He raised his hand to silence him. "We'll speak of that, but not now." He frowned. "Where are your brothers, Kano?" The legionary raised a wary hand and pointed to the Cathedral of the Mark. Sanguinius nodded gravely, his ambered eyes surveying the wreckage around them with no small amount of dismay. "Look at what has been wrought here. set in motion by lies. He stumbled back on his injured legs, his powerful wings unfurling to their fullest extent. I swear to you, it will go no further. Kano's liege lord spared him a look, briefly placing a hand on his shoulder. Today your battle has been fought and won. Now I will end this. With a storm roar, the angel vaulted into the sky, drawing his great crimson sword as he rose. Polluted clouds broke apart in his path, scattering away from him as if in fear, and the Primarch became a streak of golden fire, a mote of light moving at inconceivable speeds, falling towards the Temple of Bones like a blazing comet. A single feather, pure white and dazzling, settled slowly on the deck at Kano's feet. Glassy matter and bone frames exploded into millions of fragments, the circular mandala window destroyed by the force of the angel's arrival. Sanguinius landed with a thunderous roar at his back, his wings rising in shimmering arcs of white, the shine of his battle armor as dazzling as the light of daybreak. A pure force of will radiated from him, magnificent and unending. The Primarch was at that moment the very antithesis of the shroud of hate and horror that had taken root upon Cygnus Prime. It was as if the universe itself had decided to express its disgust at these demon things through his martial fury. Sanguinius rose like a golden storm of vengeance incarnate, the righteous power of a brother betrayed and a father wronged, crackling behind his fingertips. Lightning swirled as he surged forward, the length of his crimson-bladed greatsword lifting to cut the ashen dust. He did not turn to lay his gaze upon the goated-headed Kyrus, not even for an instant, yet Sanguinius' sword left his hand with a flick of his forearm, and it sang as it sliced through the air towards the pink-skinned demon. The tip of the blade pierced Kyrus' muscular gut with such force that it ran it through, slamming the beast back into the walls of the bone temple. The creature would release a high-pitched, ululating scream as it struggled in place, pinned by the full length of the sword, as if it were an insect of curious nature captured for study. This was done on fleet foot in the blink of an eye. The bloodthirster was already turning towards the angel, its attempted execution of Captain Ralderon forgotten in the face of this new attacker. Axe and lash flexed in brawny clawed hands as it squared up to meet him. Sanguinius crossed the yelled tassel-tailed of the chamber floor, the cheers of his noble sons now echoing. Bloodletters baying for murder rushed to meet him, hellblades red as hate rebounding off his armor. The Primarch gave them little heed, smashing them aside or crushing them to the ground with heavy swinging blows from his mailed fist. Kabanda spat and threw the arc of his whip in a downward stroke. Sanguinius did not falter in his approach. His left wing snapped forward to cloak his face, meeting the barbed tip of the lash, blood jetting where the hooks bit deep. He hissed in pain but shrugged off the assault, closing to point-blank distance, reaching his foe. The demon was ready for him. The bloodthirster's other arm fell with the axe, set to cleave the angel's skull in twine. Sanguinius' hands came together in a strident crash of sound, catching the blade between them. For a brief moment the two titans struggled against each other, eyes locked and muscles bunching. "You came back," greeted the demon. "My sons found me." "This changes nothing, little angel." The axe trembled, shifting back and forth. One mistake and the blade would fall. Across the chamber, the impaled Kyrus bellowed over the sound of the angel's legionaries in battle with its foot soldiers. "Kill him." Kabanda's tongue flickered. "Your precious legion will be destroyed, Sanguinius. You cannot stop it. Even now, your chosen are caught in the depths of a killing rage they cannot escape. It's too late. The poison is in them. You know it as well as I." "Perhaps," hissed Sanguinius, "but they will not fall today. I will not permit it." He bared his fangs in a snarl. "This ends now, demon." With a wordless shout, the angel twisted his arms, his hands tearing at the strange and ghastly material of the axe head. A sickening crack broke throughout the room, like the snapping of a spine, and Kabanda's weapon shattered across its length, scattering pieces of shrapnel. But before the creature could react, Sanguinius grasped one of the bloodthirster's curved horns and jerked it forward with all his might. The Primarch then brought his fist to meet the beast's snout, and landed a flurry of quick blows from the knuckles of his gauntleted fists before Kabunda shoved him away, spitting out globs of black, fuming blood and broken teeth, leading the demon to growl. "Look at you. Where is the noble angel now, abhuman? Better the sweet blood to smother you." Kabunda's arm swung back, brass cords of its whip scraping across the bone floor, flicking into the air for another lethal blow, as powerful as the one that had struck the angel down upon the plains of the damned. However, this time, Sanguinius reacted faster than even the eye of this powerful beast could follow, as he flashed into the air, wings crackling, and caught the razor tips of the whip before they could reach him, and the cords burned where they touched ceramite, pentacles of vapor issuing from between the armored fingers. The Primarch now dove at the bloodthirster, dragging the lash down with him, and before the creature could react, he pulled the loop across the monster's throat. Angel and demon collided, crashing to the floor. Kabunda released its grip on the lash, but it was too late. The brass cable pulled taut. Sanguinius gave the whip a violent tug, and the bloodthirster's howls became strangled and frenzied bark. The beast tried to break free, swatting at the Primarch, grasping at air, its bat-like wings unfurled, talons at their tips, scratching gouges in Sanguinius's glorious armor. With a cold and lethal precision, the Primarch arrested the wild, beating motion of the freakish wings with his free hand and spoke. "Only angels may fly," he said darkly, tearing out the black pinion from the monster's back. The sound was like the splitting of a great sacked cloth sail, and the demon Kabunda screamed loud enough to shake the walls of the very temple. Warp fire gushed from the stump of the wing, and it shuddered in agony, a sensation it had only known previously from the cries of its enemies. With the whip still coiled around its neck, the angel dragged the spitting, wounded fiend to the lip of the pit in the middle of the chamber, then lifted it so he could look at it in the face. The demon cackled through its pain, convulsing as it tried to shake free. "I will take your skull yet," it spoke. The Primarch's eyes flashed with a powerful hatred, which the demon of Khorne could scarcely fathom. "If you truly hail from the realm that men once called Hell," he intoned, "when you return there, tell your kindred it was Sanguinius who threw you back." With a grunt of effort, the angel took hold of the beast and shoved it over the spiked edge. Kabunda's curses would echo all the way down before it finally vanished, shrieking into the warp fires below. Shortly after this battle, the might of demon Kairos was similarly vanquished, banished back to the Immaterium by the still vicious Primarch. It was only after the planet had been thoroughly cleansed of its chaos taint that the bloodlust of the Blood Angels began to subside. Although Cygnus had been liberated from the grip of the ruinous powers, the victory had come at a harrowing cost. The chaotic berserker rage that had enveloped the Blood Angels left a lingering shadow over their soul, amplifying something that had already been there, long ago from their sire's inception. An insidious legacy that would manifest in the form of a great curse, later known as the Black Rage. A dark affliction which still haunts the Blood Angels and their successors to this day. A constant reminder of the horrors they endured and the price of unwavering loyalty. Following the conclusion of this protracted and audacious campaign, the Blood Angels sought to execute a warp jump towards the Throne World, the home base of humanity amidst the chaos of the Horus Heresy. Despite the formidable ruin storm conjured by the Word-bearers during the infamous Battle of Calth, the fleet's navigators, demonstrating a remarkable set of skills and talent, identified a brilliant beacon, initially mistaking it as the Astronomicon, the vital navigation tool that guided the Imperium's ships across the warp's material seas. The Ninth Fleet navigators felt strangely compelled to pursue this alluring light, believing it to be a signal of safe harbor. Desperate to return to the rightful path, the fleet promptly initiated a warp transition back into real space. However, upon their emergence from the warp, the Blood Angels found themselves disoriented and hundreds of light years off course, very far removed from their intended destination. The unexpected arrival was no mere happenstance. It was an ironic twist of fate that the Blood Angels inadvertently intercepted the beacon emanated by an alien artifact known as a Pharos, located on the distant planet of Sotha. Unbeknownst to them, this miscalculation had transported the Blood Angels clear across a galaxy, landing them within the realms of Ultramar. As they regrouped and assessed their situation, the Blood Angels were soon approached by a skirmish line of unfamiliar starships. These vessels were striking in appearance with bright cobalt blue hulls adorned with the elegant white and gleaming gold trim of the Legion whose command they were under. This heralded an unexpected encounter. To their astonishment, the Blood Angels were currently being welcomed by none other than Reboot Guilliman, the revered Primarch of the 13th Legion, the Ultramarines. He extended a warm greeting to Sanguinius and welcomed his brother Primarch to the legendary 500 worlds of Ultramar, a bastion of hope amidst the encroaching darkness of the galaxy. This meeting would not only signify a moment of camaraderie, but also marked a turning point in the great struggle of the Horus Heresy. With the Imperium now fractured by the raging ruin storm, which was a warp storm of unprecedented magnitude and scale, the galaxy stood divided, casting entire realms into utter isolation. For the realm of Ultramar, this meant a grim reality that the once vital Astronomicon was no longer visible to them, leaving the fate of Terra and the Emperor as a matter of painful speculation. Amidst this darkness, Reboot Guilliman, Primarch of the Ultramarines, resolved to ensure that the Emperor's vision would survive. So here he would find Imperium Secundus, a secondary bastion of the Emperor's will and belief, intended to continue the Great War against the traitors and maintain the Emperor's great work in the absence of the guidance of Terra. In this uncertain time, fate seemed to bring the Blood Angels to Ultramar after their harrowing escape from the Cygnus cluster. Recognizing Sanguinius' noble character and the strength of his legion, Guilliman declared the Blood Angels Primarch as the rightful heir to the Emperor's will and position, naming him as the new Emperor of Imperium Secundus. Shortly thereafter, the Dark Angels too would arrive, following the mysterious emanations from the Ferris, adding their strength to the Ultramarines and the Blood Angels' forces. Guilliman would then appoint Lionel Johnson as Lord Protector of this newly formed Imperium, granting him supreme authority over its military forces in a form whose title was comparable to that of War Master, where only the Emperor would be able to overrule his actions. Yet the formation of Imperium Secundus would soon be threatened, as Conrad Kurz, the dreaded and reviled Primarch of the Night Lords, had been hiding within the lower decks of the Dark Angel's flagship, the Invincible Reason. In a calculated escape, Kurz unleashed terror across Macragge, the capital world of Ultramar, seeking to spread chaos and discord within this fractious alliance. In the same period, the Blood Angels would engage once more in the flames of war, this time during the Second Battle of Paramore. Somewhere within the tumultuous years of 008 or 011 M31, they would be involved in a mass ground assault, as they joined the Loyalist forces attempting to reclaim the strategically crucial world of Paramore 5 from Horus's traitor legion. The assault, however, would ultimately end in failure, as the traitor forces held fast against the Loyalist valiant push, regardless of how many lives they lost defending their positions. In the year 009 M31, as the Imperium lay fractured and isolated by the oppressive ruin storm, despair gripped even the proudest of realms. For Ultramar, this was a time of silence, as the Astronomicon had vanished, and the world of Terra had in essence faded into myth. Determined to carry out the Emperor's legacy, Reboot Guilliman, Primarch of the Ultramarines, had forged a plan, declaring Imperium Secundus as the rightful heirs to the Emperor's will. With the arrival of the Blood Angels and the Dark Angels, this was made significantly easier, as they were able to scale up his plans to a significant degree. That would be until the rampage of their erstwhile brother, Conrad Kurz, the Primarch of the Night Lords, led to a crescendo where Kurz ensnared both Guilliman and the Lion in a trap of devastating precision. Through explosives planted within a chapel, he brought the structure down in such a way that it would slay his enemies and bury them in the symbolic ruins of this once great empire. However, a twist of fate seemed to arrive just in the nick of time. The Loyalist Iron Warriors, under the command of warsmith Barbarous Dantioch, who had been communicating with Guilliman via something that the Ferris was designed to do, opened a portal on Sotha just as Guilliman and the Lion were about to be slain, escorting them to safety through this strange yet powerful device. It seems that in the 10th years following the creation of Imperium Secundus and the hunt for Conrad Kurz, Lionel Johnson remained rather tense and somewhat despondent. For 2 years, Lionel Johnson clashed repeatedly with Reboot Guilliman over the matters of policy and security, particularly concerning rebellious fractions on Macragge proper, which Lionel Johnson was certain Kurz had interacted with and was directly influencing them. The conflict intensified after a self-terminating bomber targeted an Astartes convoy, prompting the Lion to impose martial law across Macragge with the forces of his First Legion. Convinced that Kurz was concealed in the insurgent stronghold of Illyrium, Lionel Johnson advocated for an overwhelming orbital bombardment in order to eliminate any possibility of the Night Hunter's escape. However, this aggressive strategy was openly opposed by both Sanguinius and Guilliman, leading the Lion to dispatch his Dreadwing in order to root out the rebels and slay any who fought. During the assault on Alma Mons, Lionel Johnson would manage to corner Kurz, leading to a ferocious battle, which in the aftermath, Lionel Johnson was determined to demand an explanation of Kurz for his betrayal, to which the Night Hunter replied, "Why not?" He admitted to an inner turmoil, to being a monster who was beyond control by design. Though Lionel Johnson had finally subdued his brother, he could not bring himself to end Kurz's life. Instead, he violently disabled the Night Hunter by severing his backpack and breaking his spine above bended knee. Kurz was subsequently delivered gravely injured to Guilliman and Sanguinius for judgment. A triumph would be convened thereafter, where Kurz defended his actions as the inevitable results of his designed nature, claiming innocence on the grounds that he was fulfilling the purpose he was intended to. He further antagonized the Lion by accusing him of secretly ordering orbital strikes, defying Guilliman's authority within his own homeworld. Enraged by these accusations, Lionel Johnson attempted to strike Kurz down with a mighty blow, but Sanguinius intervened, while Guilliman seized Lionel Johnson's lion sword and broke it in two across his thigh. Sanguinius dismissed Lionel Johnson from court thereafter, effectively exiling him from Imperium Secundus. Now the Lion was humiliated and resentful, leading to the withdrawal of the Dark Angels from Macragge. Soon after, back aboard the Invincible Reason, Lionel Johnson brooded over the past years, questioning his actions and decisions in his final moments on the flagship, as he ordered the Chula engine to teleport himself and Holgun, one of his most loyal lieutenants, back to Macragge. With the execution of Kurz imminent, he had to act quickly, and so the Lion materialized within the chamber, halting Sanguinius and arguing for Kurz's continued existence. He presented Kurz's precognitive ability as evidence. If the Night Hunter truly foresaw his own death at the hands of an assassin sent by the Emperor, then the Emperor must still live. This reasoning resonated with Sanguinius, who knew his own prophetic visions of the War Master and his betrayal awaited fulfillment. When Guilliman demanded a solution, Lionel Johnson knelt, offering to serve as Kurz's eternal warden. Now, if the Great Crusade was the Imperium's finest hour, then the Horus Heresy was certainly its darkest. Brother turned against brother, offering neither mercy nor respite. Heroes fell, and worlds were scorched, and the Emperor's vision of unity was shattered beyond repair. Amidst this ruin, one legion seemed to remain unflinchingly loyal, the Blood Angels, loyal to the Emperor to the very end. As the conflict deepened, Sanguinius assumed a more pivotal role, stepping into the leadership void left by Horus and rallying the Emperor's loyal forces, be they Astartes, Mechanicum, or Militarum. Under his command, the Blood Angels fought on the harshest fronts, now pitted against their former comrades who had succumbed to Horus's lure. This divide fueled a bitter enmity within the world leaders. A rivalry that had once been tempered by brotherly love had now blazed with wrath, as the two legions now saw themselves as enemies, and they clashed in some of the fiercest battles of the entire heresy. Amongst his brothers, it was said that Horus harbored a special dread for Sanguinius in combat above all else. Legends speak of him scheming and making deals with innumerable demons to ensnare or kill his former friend, devising countless plans to end his life. Yet regardless, nothing would seem to work. It was as if fate had its hands on the scales, and so would come the final hours of the siege of Terra. In the final days of the Horus Heresy, the Blood Angels Legion was destined to see its finest hour. This culminating battle, known as the Siege of Terra, marked the climax of the conflict fought on Terra itself between the forces of chaos led by the traitor War Master Horus and the loyal defenders of the Imperium, commanded by the Emperor, with loyalist legions obstructed by the traitor forces. The Imperial Fist, led by Rogel Dorn, and the White Scars, commanded by Jagatai Khan, were just barely able to manage to return to Terra in time to prepare for its defenses. Dorn fortified the palace beyond any measure that had previously been considered possible, determined to hold humanity's last bastion against the onslaught. While these loyalist forces assembled, the Blood Angels would secure a victory against a greater demon of chaos undivided. Eventually, when the Blood Angels arrived, the division of combat would be as follows. The Imperial Fist would hold the inner walls and man the batteries. The Blood Angels would protect the outer walls and the Eternity Gate. All the while, the White Scars would run a hit-and-run campaign against the traitors' flanks. Alongside the Imperial Fists and the White Scars, the Blood Angels would fight and show their unrelenting zeal to hold the walls that were the last bastions for humanity. Sanguinius, the legendary Primarch, led the defense with a steadfast, iron-willed resolve that seemed to embody the Emperor's own will. 3 times Horus's full forces managed to gain a foothold on the walls, and each time they were driven back by Sanguinius and his Blood Angels. And when the walls ultimately succumbed to the relentless assault of Chaos Titans, Sanguinius orchestrated an orderly retreat to the inner palace, ensuring the loyalist forces were able to regroup and fortify the final line of defense at the Eternity Gate, which was in essence the entrance to the Emperor's throne room proper. Here Sanguinius would hold his ground, facing the relentless advances of chaos. He would fight with a fury that bought humanity precious time for the wounded to be carried to safety. As the last of the loyalist forces crossed into the palace, Sanguinius turned to make his own retreat. But before the mighty gates could close, he was confronted by Kabanda, the legendary demon of Khorne. What followed was a titanic duel which has resonated through the records of the Imperium's history, as Sanguinius, weary from days upon days of unrelenting, unceasing combat, where he was essentially viewed as being on every single battlefield almost simultaneously, met Kabanda over the skies above the Imperial Palace. But in this second confrontation, the angel would be temporarily caught off guard by the demon's cunning, as he was no longer just a being of pure power, but one of intellect as well. And the confrontation would go as follows. Orion had fought on Cygnus Prime. At the time, he was almost a century dead by that campaign, interred within his coffin and awakened only rarely between battles. But he had been on the surface of Cygnus Prime when the Legion learned the first of the grievous truths about Horus's war. He knew what he was seeing when the axe tore through the porticules of Terra's final wall, and he recognized the demon that burst through its wake. The name rippled out across the box in amazement, in warning, in defiance, and in the voices of hundreds of warriors. Kabanda, the dreadnought shell's box casted. Following Orion's unspoken thought, the corpse twitched, the war machine raised its guns and started firing. He was the first Blood Angel to die to the demon's axe that day, as it struck him with enough force to completely shatter the shell of his dreadnought, crashing the remains across the grounds of the Royal Ascension. When the shell came to rest, bleeding oil and its artificial womb fluid, cracks in the armor revealed the corpse within. Without the life support systems of its destroyed coffin, the mutilated corpse flailed helplessly, fleeing the touch of the open air as if it were acid upon his skin. Orion took almost a minute to truly die, staring up at the sky with his own eyes for the first time in almost a century, choking on air he was no longer used to breathing. His death was technically a stillbirth, as he had died while being reborn onto the world. thrown halfway out of the synthetic coffin womb which had been his home for the past century. Such were the wonders of Imperial technology. The demon drank each life he had ended. Souls swirled around his head, a halo, a vile halo visible to the others of his kind, a crown to inspire jealousy. With each fall of his axe, the demon reaped angelic life, feeling his corpus swell with returning strength. The cream of the Blood Angel's heroism thrashed in his aura, their souls disintegrating to become part of him. As their identities crumbled, the Bane felt the memories filling out the hollows of his essence. He remembered wars against aliens he had never fought. He remembered glories he had never earned. He was flushed, bloated even, with the righteous anger of humanity's living weapons. Step by step, Kabanda avenged himself on the legion that had seen him slain several corporeal years ago. He craved their lives for his feeding frenzy. He could not take the gate without building his strength. He crushed angels between his fingers, squeezing them until pulped meat ran through the cracks of their ceramite. He ground their wounded ones below his hooved feet as they spent their last seconds of life, hoping he could be killed with bolter fire. He killed with every step, not content to merely swallow souls, devouring the angels whole or in pieces, if they were moronically brave enough to come within reach. Several were wise enough to fall back, only for the demon's whip to lash them in coils to pull them within reach of eager, curling claws. His wings thickened, grew stronger, his claws hardened, no longer feeling as though they might crack at the first rake of his talons. He licked the blood from his palm, fingers tasting the final desperation of the last warrior he killed. Armed with the mortal's name, 60 years of valiant service, not only to mankind's ignorant empire, but to the blood god that every warrior secretly served. How could they not know it? Every drop of blood shed fed the father of war. Here, of all places, all they had to do was look up to see the faces, the teeth, the smiles in the seething sky. Horizon to horizon, everything they did here fed the pantheon. Even if they won, they would lose. Later, there would be tales told of the Battle of the Segmentum Imperialis, and in the way such stories would be an uneasy mix of truth and lies. Zephon would hear many of these tales in the time when memories of their father were all the ninth bloodline possessed. He would listen to the tales of how the great angel fought with his back to the Eternity Gate, and he would know which parts were truth and which parts were myth, fueled by idealism or manipulations driven by the speaker's agenda. Only rarely did he lend his voice to affirm or deny, no matter which ways the stories went. Far more often he would listen to them partly and commit these newest tellings to memory. Then when the time came, he would retire to his stasis crypt aboard his warship Invictrix. A sleeper is not supposed to dream in stasis, but this time was yet to come. In the years after the war, Stefan always dreamed. In his visions, the tales he heard would mesh with his true memories, creating tales that danced along the borders between fact and fiction. Upon rising, he would cast off the unwelcome dream echoes, but it would become more difficult as the years waned. What, the listeners would ask, really happened. So Stefan told him. The duel was swift. That much of the old stories was true. It lasted scarcely 5 blows between man and demon, but the creature you speak of was not there for our father. He is not named the Bane of the Great Angel. He is the Bane of the Ninth Bloodline. He was there for us. The court of the four gods took much of their substance from ancient human atrocities. After Cygnus Prime, Kabanda had crawled, bleeding before the skull throne, there to endure the war god's laughter. He could have suffered through the mockery, marking names of his kindreds that laughed the loudest in their creator's shadow, and abiding to them the butcher's bill once this time of shame had passed. Every sneer and smirk would motivate him, but Kabanda had not been ready for the war god's disgust. The Lord of Blood had not derided him like the lesser creatures of his court, nor punished him in rage, as had happened to the wingless one, the exile Scarbrand, for the moronic sin of taking up his axe against the blood god. Khorne, armored in runic plate and tall as the chain-whipped sky above, had regarded his beaten champion who brought the stink of failure into his sacred realm in the warp's deepest reaches. No punishment, no mockery Kabanda prostrated his ruined form before the skull throne, feeling the eyes of his former underlings upon him like the itching of vermin. There before the throne, the blood god dismissed his failed Templar with a flick of his armored knuckle, as reality melted around him and it took shape once more. He was now far from the court of the Brass Lord. The rage that had sustained him and formed so much of his identity was cold and slow to rekindle now. Here, without weapons, he would re-earn the god's favor by not just becoming brutal, but cunning as well. And he did not expect the chance for redemption to come so soon, as he would state, "I have swallowed failure and learned its bitterness. Now allow me to redeem myself, or destroy me where I stand, for I have eaten enough shame to last an eternity." The blood god would listen to him and give him a simple task: 500 souls of the bloodline that shamed you. This was no test. He could achieve that in a day, in an hour, if his strength was returned swiftly enough. Miraculous hope flared in the demon's core. 500 souls, the ward card continued, from the bloodline that shamed you, harvested in the presence of the angel of blood. The demons dined on their bodies and drank blood like gluttons, gorging on wine, ingesting the stories of their lives, leeching the strength of their deaths. It wasn't long before even the blood angels fled, falling back towards the gate, crawling into their battle tanks in a bid to find some way to fight back. They were far too slow, as Kabanda was war given form. Those that ran, he leapt on, pulled back with cracks of his whip. Those that remained died where they stood. He heard them calling for their Gene-Sire, and what a sweet sound their controlled panic made. These transhuman pretenders to immortality, eloquently begging for aid of their angelic prince. Kabanda would cut them down, mid-plea. The demon did not count the lives as mortals count. He simply knew. He felt the tally of souls in his essence, each one becoming a part of his corpus, as it was torn from the flesh and freed for the warp to claim. Swollen to his previous power, the creature never slowed, never ceased. When his prey retreated, he gave chase. He lashed them down. He cleaved the earth with his axe, pouring his wrath into the ground itself to swallow up groups of earthbound angels. Within corporeal minutes after manifesting, the creature was close. He could feel the eyes of his creator above, and the zealous, jealous hatred of his bloodletting lessers. The angel landed before him, wings spread out in artistic intimidation. Pale feathers composed in warlike serenity. That serenity was almost believable, but for the hate that burned in those beautiful eyes. Kabanda was immune to the Primarch's masquerade of perfection. He knew the fear of failure that ran through his foe's bloodstream, and he'd bathed in the angels' hatred before. Their presence exerted a pull of gravity, the battle coalescing around them. The blood angels coming for the demon lord were cut apart and dragged down by the red-skinned children of Khorne. The demons foolish enough to run at the angel were destroyed by a phalanx of Astartes forming around their Primarch. "Demon Sanguinius said with almost disbelieving softness, "Are you so eager to die a second time?" To the demon's way of seeing the world, in smears of life force and promises of running blood, the angel looked burdened by weariness. He could sense the exhaustion burning off the angel's sweating skin. Kabanda smiled, his own unease disappearing, his tongue slopping from his parted jaws, and polished cracked obsidian of his teeth. Slaver hung like ropes from that toothed maw. "You look tired, little angel of the craven god." It began on the ground. The angel and the demon came together, blade on blade, beating their wings for a balance in opposition. "I killed you once," the angel snarled into the demon's inhuman visage. "I will kill you again." The 9th Primarch swore, through the effort matching the demon's strength with his own. Blood hissed and steamed on his armor. It trickled into the lines of his lip. Kabanda bared his teeth, fury melting back, replaced by a mocking grin. The creature had expected these words. Now they were spoken. He welcomed them. "In your arrogance, you still believe this is about you and me. That, O purest one, is your father's vanity in you." The demon was ungifted at reading human expressions, but something like pain flickered on the angel's face, and that too was truly beautiful. Kabanda drew his gargoyle-like head back, brazenly readying for a headbutt. The angel launched backwards, just as the demon desired. Kabanda stole those precious few seconds of freedom to turn and sweep the great axe through the warring blood angels and Neverborn nearby, butchering swaths of both. Strength flowed through him with a cramping sting, and the creature turned in time to catch the angel's blade against the flat of his axe. Again, they came face to face. "I'm not here for you." The demon's mouth wasn't made for human language, and his fangs were aligned for aesthetics of cruelty, not set by evolution. "You are nothing but a flicker in the fires of time. A pawn with pretty wings, calling itself a king." Sanguinius' eyes were tight, half closed with strain. Words were almost beyond him, every vein and tendon thickly visible. Kabanda's blood-stained throat was already hoarse with the effort of human speech, but more words bubbled forth through a knife-fanged smile. "You taught me patience, angel of the craven god. You taught me my place. I am the beast that will feast on your sons for centuries to come. I am the cancer that will eat away at your lineage, until the last man with your blood in his veins is dust on Balfora's wind. Far from burning avenues reflected along the angel's blade, I will destroy you, demon, every time you crawl from that prison of hell." Kabanda's teeth clenched with effort as he spoke again. "You won't be around to defend your children forever." Sanguinius paled beneath the war grime darkening his features. Kabanda roared, hurling the angel back. Sanguinius twisted in the air, avoiding the swing of the axe but not the lash of the whip. It barely struck, coiling around one of his wings, but it was enough for the demon's needs. Kabanda dragged on the lash, pulling the Primarch from the air, back down to the ground, to the broken marble below. Sanguinius struck with inhuman grace, already weaving a slice at the entangling lash. Kabanda cared not. He abandoned the whip, leaping to his beating wings, making for the center of the royal ascension, where the blood angels clustered around their thickest. World Eaters and the War Master's other half-mortals cried their blessings up at him, as if their benedictions mattered at all to a being such as he, in a moment such as this. He landed amidst a dozen red-clad angels, relieving them of their lives with the swings of his axe. Sounding his carnosaur roar, he devoured their souls and stories, names and faces. Memories not of his own saturated him, threatening his senses. Still the creature killed, using every precious second. Twice more the angel was upon him, and twice more the demon managed to barely break free, battering the Primarch aside or hurling him away, just enough to escape like a cornered rat. Kabanda fled again, taking flight. This time, the angel was on him in the air. The two of them crashed into the earth scarcely 2 seconds after leaving it, the slender golden figure rolling atop the demonic giant, raising his sword and plunging it down. The demon pounded the angel's side with the flat of his axe, desperation sinking into his essence. Now, this was faster than their battles on Cygnus Prime, devoid of posturing and skill. Reduced to the clumsy viciousness of a brawl, he rose, bellowing, roaring for opponents, launching himself at the closest blood angels, and rending them limb from limb. Their bolsters spat up at him, their swords cut into him, and they died, making a display of their futile wrath. The angel struck him again, this time with enough force to throw him from his hooved feet. The Primarch was a hunting hawk, all wings and cutting edges, thrashing against the demon as it fought to get free. Kabanda shielded his face with his free arm, a moment too late, as he snarled and crashed, as the silver blade laid open his face to bare bone, stealing one of his eyes. It didn't hurt, as mortals feel pain, but the shame raged and burned him, in its own ways, just as fiercely. Kabanda would now futilely rage as he reached blindly with a singular arm, raw fortune letting him close his fist around one of the angel's legs. He would then crack the Primarch like a whip, smashing him into one of the statues lingering in the ascension, not turning to see how the angel had been wounded, not caring beyond the fact that he was free again. He could slaughter a few more of the angel's miserable children and make for the open gate. The god of war would reward him and restore him to favor. He beat his wings, gaining the sky, hurling his axe at the form of a Legion Fellblade. The weapon cut through the tank's core, detonating it in a plume of fire and smoke and fresh souls. Just a few more. The demon waved aside the irrelevant slashing of last cannon beams and rockets going wide. Unarmed but for his claws, he dove forward towards the blood angels closest to him and closest to the gate. His claws would be more than enough. Sanguinius would then become a bolt of gold and silver, hurrying the demon from above. The creature tried to ignore the angel, then to batter the Primarch aside, failing, enduring a myriad of wounds, which kept appearing almost at the speed of light. Said wounds driven by the angel's blade. The irony of such was not lost on the beast. The demon was forced to slow its charge, venting its pain and frustration in another roar. Each time the angel would pull free, the demon attempted to drag him back into the brawl. When the demon surged back up, the angel was upon him. Half a breath later, a winged white shrike circling a creature and raining silver blows. Kabanda's roars became howls, then bestial detonations of anger and pain. The demon had lost an eye. The blood angels saw their father pulpit in his fist and hurl the resulting sludge aside. When they neared, Sanguinius ordered them away, in a strained voice over the vox. The World Eaters hissed the Primarch, "Hold them back." The demon and the angel clutched each other's throats, the former to choke the life from the other, the latter using his grip only to smash the back of his foe's head against the marble ground. Sanguinius, dark with strangulation, with strings of spit hanging from his teeth, wrenched the demon's head up and down, again and again and again. Fists first cracking the marble with an anvil of Kabanda's skull, then breaking it. The stone broke, yet the beast's skull refused to. Nevertheless, it was enough. The creature's claws went slack for long enough that the angel broke free as he launched into the sky. The demon was either unable to ignore this foe, or too wounded and blood-frenzied to let go. With a spray of stinking blood from its wounded wings, Kabanda gave chase. Later he would realize it poisoned its final chance at its fading victory, the moment it abandoned its hunt for the souls of the ninth bloodline, when it allowed its rage and fear to cloud its vision. Later it would be too late to matter. As Sanguinius descended, as the demon rose, the Primarch had drawn both his spear and his sword, and the angel hurled the lance with a cry of effort. The spear took the demon's chest, penetrating the armor and the corpus, sinking home as if it belonged there. A thunderous cheer rose from the warriors on the ground. The demon's next roar was wholly bestial, a cry of vented frustration. Wounded in truth, it struggled to climb. Feverish, almost fearful, in need to catch its tormentor. Sanguinius would then give the wounded beast what it desired. As he closed the distance, white wings sleek to its back, the angel took the creature as it was gaining strength in its climb, rolling aside from the demon's reaching claws and striking behind with the force of the Emperor's wrath. As he hit between the wings, the sword hitting the creature's spine, shattering its back and bursting from Kabanda's breastplate. The blade's point hissed with a smoke of stolen souls now freed, leaking out from the wound, and the demon hung in the air, a moment more in defiance of mortal law. It gagged, and a sludge of undigested spirits sluiced from its open jaws. Kabanda dropped, the creature crashing against the sanctum's walls, leaving a smear of demonic blood as it fell. Its wings no longer beat. Its limbs were dead. Sanguinius followed the body in a dive, gripping the demon by the back of the neck and the hilt of his own sword, impaled upon its spine. He could have let the creature fall. Many who had seen it would wonder why not. But the angel screamed, the sound itself as invested with rage as any that had ever left the demon's throat. As he hurled the dying monster across the royal ascension, it crashed amidst the advancing horde and rolled bonelessly down the marble stairs, a monument to the failure of naked fury. Shortly after this bout, another fight commenced. This time it would involve Demon Primarch Angron, who had been greatly empowered, far beyond his previous levels, by all the bloodshed and murder that had occurred on Terra. The angel and the demon met in the air, beneath a sky the color of blood, drawing breaths that taste like murder. The first impact of blade against blade is a metallic thundercrack, while their sons wage war below, fighting and dying in the shadows of their father's wings. The Lord of the Red Sands swings, and the black blade shrieks. Its steel feasted on souls, but the angel is gone, twisting away, soaring higher. Angron beats his wings, giving chase, enraged at his own cumbersome strength. It's like fighting a shadow. Each time he closes on Sanguinius, the angel rolls aside, or furls his wings and drops away. Each missed swing of his sword, each failed grasp with his talons, resonates inside Angron's skull with a splash of acid. The nails bite to give him strength. This is so, but they also bite to punish him. Now more than ever, the nails bite with the sound of Horus's urgent commands, begging for the angel's death. Angron, what little is left of Angron, now that his soul has been transmogrified into the flesh matter of an ethereal god, has never heard Horus beg before. The weakness in the War Master's voice makes him shudder with revulsion. Sanguinius dives, low, swooping towards the ground, and Angron follows. Loci beams stab up at him, at both of them, lancing through the sky. They fly through detonations that blacken the angel's armor and darken his wings. Explosions that do nothing but tighten the demon's hold on incarnation. Every death taking place upon this planet, every life ending beneath them, strengthens Angron and seals his wounds. Closer he comes, closer. He can smell the sweat on his brother's skin. He can hear the drumbeat of his brother's heart, of his brother's blood. He can smell the sweetness in the angel's wounds. Sanguinius senses it. The angel veers away, with a grace Angron cannot hope to match. A spread of feathered wings arrests his dive, and a slash of silver rips across the demon's face. There is no pain. Most of his face has been cut off from his skull, but there is no pain. He experiences pain in the ways others might feel grief or trauma or frustration. To him, it is a helplessness, a wound within. It is something that cannot be tolerated, something that can only be overcome with the running of the enemy's blood. He is blind, his face broken by the silver sword, and without organic receptors to process his injuries. It is a weakness that hurts. His eyes regenerate as he thrashes blindly with his blade. He can see again, dull and dim for another few moments, then with a clarity that defeats the ash and dust swirling in the air. He doesn't see as a human sees. Angron sees the fire of souls, and his brother's flares the brightest of all. When they meet again, it's a killing embrace. The Lord of the Red Sands tears the angel from the sky, clutching his golden brother in his great claws. Bearing Sanguinius down, they fall and fall and fall, and crash through the glassic dome of the Martian temple atop the warmonger titan Malax. They strike the floor in a roll that would break any mortal bones, their tumbling bodies obliterating the mosaic rendering of the Opus Mechanica, sacred icon of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Angron gets a clawed hand around the angel's head. He beats Sanguinius' skull to the floor once, twice, thrice, and cracks web out along the tiles in stone-splitting veins. A fourth time, a fifth. There is weakness then. Perhaps it should be pain as well, but most definitely weakness. Angron's grip slackens and his arm dissolves. Literally, it dissolves from the shoulder down, and the Lord of the Red Sands is thrown back as the angel rises. In Sanguinius' hands is a pistol, and the dregs of Angron's sentience recognize this as the melta-weapon, Infernus, a once-used thing of incineration. The angel then casts it aside and takes wing, diving right at the demon. Leading with his sword, Angron rises his own blade, feeling the flow of the incoming blows like promises whispered in warning, and he catches each of the angel's thrusts before they can impact him. Metal grinds, sparks spray, arcing out from the meeting blades, hypnotic in their falling beauty. For a moment, just a moment, he is on the plains of the Shurazun, camping rough beneath the pale moon, watching the fireflies play above the banked campfires of his freed slave army. How peaceful the night had been, even with the nails knuckling into the back of his brain. How peaceful that one night was before the Emperor took him away from his real brothers and sisters, siblings of his heart, not of manufactured blood, leaving them to fight alone, leaving them to die, leaving him to face this unwanted life, and Sanguinius impales him. A lance of ice runs through where his heart should be. The two brothers are face to face, one of them a visage of bloodied human perfection, the other a construct of absolute inhumanity, rage made manifest. As close as they are, despite the changes to Angron's vision, he sees the tenderness etched on the angel's features. the faint cuts and scratches that the battle for Terra has written into Sanguinius' flesh, indelibly marking him. This war has rendered the perfect imperfect. Die, Sanguinius tells him with the gentleness of giving a great gift. I free you from this torment. Angron's lips peel back, in memory of a smile. He tries to speak. Speaking is difficult, not because he is dying, but because he is no longer a creature for whom speaking is natural or a necessary process. Speech is an echo from a lost life. The Lord of the Red Sands expresses himself in slavering roars and the death of his foes. Sanguinius sees the way Angron's face twists, trying to remember how to form words, sees that the demon is not dying. The Lord of the Red Sands moves, but the angel is faster. Sanguinius tears his blade free and leaps upwards, taking to the sky. Bleeding, laughing, the demon follows. They swoop between temple towers and rise from the back of Malax Murdus. They break away into the open sky. Sanguinius is slower in the open, but he is built for this. He is graceful and experienced and born for aerial warfare. Angron has the unreal strength of demonic muscle, but he is a gargoyle chasing a hawk. Sanguinius weaves and soars. He dives out of his clutches and
kill him.
Horus inside the demon's mind, the words bloated by the pantheon, ripe with borrowed power from the gods. Beneath those words is the promise of pain, true pain, nails pain. The Lord of the Red Sands beats his wings harder, his sword trailing through the wake of screaming souls, the dead of Terra singing their song. They race towards the ground, hardly an arm's reach above the heads of their warring sons, fast enough that their armies are an incandescent blur. Angron swings the black blade. He gouges earth and sends blood angels and world eaters tumbling across the ground, their destroyed bodies, their souls spilling into the warp's million waiting maws. Without warning, Sanguinius climbs and soars.
This is your chance, what you were born and reborn for.
The Lord of the Red Sands ignores Horus's pulling. He senses Sanguinius tiring and sees it in the flicker of his soulfire. His brother's spirit ripples with the desperate sweetness of exhaustion. War, battlement, bane of the ninth bloodline. Yes, the angel's strength is running dry. He had not been facing his brother at his best. The demon gathered speed, flying into the polluted wind, while anti-air fire scratches the air around him. Sanguinius weaves aside from the blinding slashes and last cannon beams, rolls away from the juddering passage of a legion stormbird. Angron, far less maneuverable, crashes into it and goes through it, tastes the flavor of the doomed souls as their craft comes apart around them. It is nothing to him, expenditures of a breath's worth of effort. Behind him, the stormbird falls from the sky, its hull aflame, carved in two. The large piece of its structure will tumble against the sides of the Sanctum Imperialis, detonating against the thickest void shields ever created. Wreckage will rain upon the warriors of both sides. Angron knows none of this, will never know it.
Don't fail me.
The babbling of a frightened creature speaks as though it were in control. The Lord of the Red Sands pays it no heed. They dive through death clouds of a falling titan, into black smoke and white fires of plasma. The billowing smoke cannot hide the light of the angel's soul. Angron is close enough that he parts his jaws in order to reveal uneven rows of mismatched teeth that jut up from bleeding gums, as they circle in this burning, choking sphere that only burns and chokes one of them. The demon gives a draconic roar. The sound is exultant and instinctive. It is unfiltered emotion, and it reeks of more triumph than rage. Angron's mouth is still open when the spear hurled from the angel's left hand strikes. It shatters most of the demon's teeth, severs its tongue from the throat root, and punches through the back of his head, with the cervical segments of his spine reduced to ectoplasmic chunks. Angron falls, boneless, stunned from the sky. The angel twists in the smoke and follows his downed brother. Angron hits the royal ascension with a cratering force at the heart of the two warring legions. His impact kills almost 100 warriors from both sides. But this is another concern outside the shreds of his sentience. The surviving world eaters cheer him through the dust. They bay at him like loyal hounds, but he knows nothing outside his own fury. He claws at the spear and roars around its impaling length. In these helpless seconds, he's beast stupid, in sound and in action. Thrashing in the dirt, the lance comes free, slick with ichor, pretending to be blood. Goblets of demonic flesh sizzling on its silver surface. Already the demon is reforming, reknitting, sustained by whatever metaphysical process fuels his existence. The Lord of the Red Sands throws the weapon away, in time to meet its wielder. The angel descends, with a silence that stings of false righteousness, as though he were a creature too enlightened to feel rage. The brothers collide in the crater they made. Around them the battle for the Eternity Gate rages, and the World Eaters are coming. The World Eaters and the Life Takers and the Bloodletters. Sanguinius senses them draw near. He hears their howling. Angron sees this awareness dawn in his brother's eyes. Sanguinius hacks and hacks and hacks as the snarls of chain axes and demon blades grow louder. It isn't enough. The angel launches away, a crack of his wings carrying him upwards. The Lord of the Red Sands knows he cannot catch Sanguinius in the sky. He scrambles for the fallen spear and draws it back. And this time, there is no chase. This time, Angron is ready. He throws the spear, still slathered in ichor from when he tore it out of his own throat. The second he casts it, it rips through the air with a concussive drumbeat, breaking the sound barrier. The angel rolls aside with the grace of the Skyborn, dodging this strike of bladed intent. No, Angron sees, not dodging, faster than the eye can follow. The angel caught the spear as it passed, rolled with the momentum, and now he casts it back with a cry of effort. Angron will catch it, this twig of a thing, and he clutches at nothing but air. And the force of a meteor hits him in the chest, throwing him down, pinning him to the warp-stained ground. For several unreal seconds, the Lord of the Red Sands is impaled in place, speared through the chest. There is no pain, only humiliation. He frees himself in time to see Sanguinius ascending, leaving him behind. His wounds close, but slower than before. The nails bite harder, despising his weakness. Angron turns his back on his brother, seeking the lesser blood angels in Legion Red. He wades through them, sending their bodies flying back, with heating swings of his soul-thirsty sword. If he cannot catch the angel, he will lure the angel back to him. He learned from the Bane. It takes no time at all. Angron scarcely began to shed blood before he hears the descending beat of angelic wings. The Lord of the Red Sands wipes the writhing bodies of the dying blood angels from where they splintered upon his blade, and turns to meet his brother once more. Bolter shells impact against him, chainswords carve into the meat of his being. He ignores this, the pitiful defiance of his nephews, with their bolters and their chainswords. He will kill them and devour them, and offer their skulls to the skull throne. Yes, but now, first the angel must die. The brothers go against one another, sword to sword. They are blurred to the mortals around them. So swift are the clashes of their blades that their swords sing a single extended note, a lasting ring without a crescendo or diminuendo. It is beautiful, that ululating chime, a masterpiece of broken physics. But only one of them is immortal. Sanguinius, failed by mortal muscle, weakened by the war, began to slow, his thrusts becoming deflections, his hacks shifted to parries. He gives ground, first by centimeters, then with greater steps. Through eyes with tense efforts, he sees he's being driven back towards the violated Eternity Gate. The Lord of the Red Sands sees it dawn on the angel's face, how the longer they fight, the weaker only one of them becomes. The searing thrash that passes through Angron's mind, he knows it will come any moment now, when desperation will force his brother's hand. Blades clash, they clash, they clash, and they clash, and they clash, and then Angron lets the silver sword run through him, taking it inside his demonic corpus as a sacrifice. He uses the blow, beating off the pain and craving the damage because it lets him get closer. Ooze bubbles through the cage of his teeth, the ectoplasm that animates him running from his body in a flow of lifeblood. No matter, it is worth it. A taloned hand snaps around Sanguinius' throat. The other thrusts forward with his blade. Sanguinius jerks as the sword slides, with miserable slowness, into his guts. His perfect features darken with pain, and the Lord of the Red Sand feeds on that sight, feeds on the angel's baring teeth, feeds on the stink of Sanguinius' rich running blood. The sensation is narcotic, intoxicatingly pure. Even the god of war, in whose shadow Angron stands, bays with pleasure at the shedding of this being's blood. Angron's grip tightens on the angel's throat. He thrusts the blade deeper, growling at the fresh flow of blood that bursts from his brother's mouth. Sanguinius' mouth works, but at first no words come forth. All he manages to breathe out is his brother's name. Brother. It is a struggle for Angron to speak, but a lifetime of bitterness is dragged with agony in his brother's beautiful eyes. He sinks the blade deeper into the angel's body, tilting it in his brother's guts, and draws Sanguinius in until they're face to face. He's close enough to smell the blood on his brother's breath. He's close enough for it to splatter against his face. Angron. No sound in life has ever been sweeter than his flawless, beloved, exemplar brother hissing his name in strangulation. Angron's jaws are poorly shaped for human speech, but the Lord of the Red Sand forces the words from his maw. Hark, the dying angel sings. Sanguinius reaches for him with weak, clawless hands. It's pathetic. The performance of a weakling. The Lord of the Red Sands doesn't need to breathe. He cares nothing if his brother's hands find their way around his throat. But the sweetness is fading. The adrenaline rush drains. Is this truly how the angel dies? Is this all the fight Sanguinius has left in his celebrated form?
Angron.
Horus, the War Master, the coward in orbit. The Lord of the Red Sand hears his voice break through the ecstatic haze. He senses Horus has been seeking to reach his blood-soaked mind for some time. There is derision in the War Master's presence, but above all, fear.
Release him. Release him. He is...
Sanguinius' reaching hands close on a fistful of cranial cables that crown Angron's head. The angel's grip on the technological dreadlocks that form the external regulators of the butcher's nails, and the beast that Angron has become realizes, much too late, the angel played the same gambit, risking the blade, welcoming it to get closer.
Kill him before.
The words cease to exist, replaced by pain, real pain, the thing he thought he was incapable of experiencing now. Stung with an unfamiliar savagery, the Lord of the Red Sands gives a roar loud enough that the sanctum's void shields shimmer with a mirage's ripple. He tears the blade from his brother's body, grappling, hurling, but the angel remains. White wings batter at the demon's face, and defeat ranking claws. He abandons his own blade, scratching and scraping at the angel. He tears away shards of golden armor. Wings bleed, feathers rain. Never once does Sanguinius make a sound. Angron cries out, a cry flavored by something other than rage. For the first time since his exaltation, agony lightning bolts through his head. Fire and ice. Ice and fire. A sensation he no longer has the mind to understand, but that will destroy him whether he understands it or not. He launches upwards, beating his ungainly wings, striving for the sky, turning, tumbling, seeking to dislodge the angel. He hears his brother now, Sanguinius' ragged hisses of breath. On the battlefield below, the legions duel in the rain of their Primarch's blood, the Lord of the Red Sands. Angron, I remember now, I am Angron. He feels his skull cracking, stretching, then cracking. A crack that paints the back of his eyes with acid. It's cracking of a slowly breaking window. The cracking of a skull underneath a tank's treads. He hears his brother now. Sanguinius' ragged hisses of breath, coming in time to the scrape of his gauntlets against the pain engine's mechanical tendrils. Their eyes meet. There is no longer mercy in the angel's pale gaze. Sanguinius is lost to the passions he has always resisted. The Lord of the Red Sand sees it in the pinpricks of his brother's pupils, in the ivory grind of his brother's fangs. The angel has lost himself to the blood need. His veins show stark blue on his cheeks. This is wrath. This is the angel unleashed. This is an anger so absolute that anger feels a bite of another forgotten emotion. Jealousy. What he sees in the angel's eyes is no bitter fury at the life of mistreatment, or rage goaded on by the will of a god that only rewards slaughter. It feeds the god of war, as all bloodshed does, but it is not born of him. It is the angel's own fury, in worship of nothing but justice. How beautiful is that? How naive, how pure. This is the demon's last cohesive thought, fueled by animal panic as much as sentient rage. Angron's frantic clawing does nothing to throw Sanguinius clear. The brothers fall together. The demon's strength lost to the concussive thrashing, the angel's rippled blood-stained wings unable to keep them both aloft. The dreadlock cables fasten deep within the meat of the monster's minds. They are not attached to his brain, they are a part of it, tendriling their way through the pain engine, replaced and so poorly simulated entire sections of the 12th Primarch cerebellum, thalamus and hypothalamus. The butcher's nails are woven throughout his brainstem, hammered in to bind them to his spinal column and central nervous system. Its process almost admirable in its barbaric effectiveness, once reproduced with malignant perfection in his exaltation from mortal to immortal. From behind the veil, Angron hears laughter, a god laughing at him, because he cares not from whence the blood flows. The death of the Lord of the Red Sands is as pleasing to this deity as the death of any other champion. Warp fire cracks from the beast's deforming skull. The cracks become crunches, each one with a conflagration that sweeps from the filaments behind Angron's eyes to the spikes of his spine. There is a feeling of violation, a deep and sick wrongness, as something is taken from him, pulled from the root of his mind. He screams then, and does something he has never done, neither in his mortal nor immortal lives. His roars of pained rage is colored by a sound so shameful he will spend eternity refusing to believe it happened. The sound is a word. The word is a plea. He begs. No. The beast grunts to his brother. This moment will never enter the legends of either legion. The Primarchs are high above the battlefield, and the few sons that are able to watch their fathers are too far away now to know what passes between them. Only Sanguinius hears Angron's last words, and it is an intimacy he will take with him to his grave. The ground rises with a disorienting speed. It's now or never. As they free fall together, the angel gives a final wrenching pull on the serpents of barbed metal. The demon's head bursts. It's a detonation, a release of internal pressure like pus from a squeezed cyst. The lion's share of Angron's brain comes free in a spray of fire and acid blood. Demon wings beat once more with a shiver, a thing of reflex. His claws slacken, and all struggle cease. The Blood Angel's Primarch then proceeds to hurl the demon's form back into the Chaos Horde, drawing howls of fury from their twisted ranks. And almost in an instant, the Chaos forces once baying at the foot of Angron's wings begin to consume him as they continue to advance. As the Chaos forces largely recoiled, the Eternity Gate would close behind Sanguinius, sealing the palace and halting the unholy tide, if only for a moment. Through acts of heroism unparalleled, Sanguinius allowed the fortification of the resolve of the last loyal defenders of Terra. His actions became a symbol of defiance in the darkest hours of the heresy. As the forces of the Space Wolves, the Dark Angels, and the Ultramarines advanced towards Terra, Horus is faced with an undeniable reality. With loyalist reinforcements imminent, he had to gamble everything, lowering the vengeful spirit's void shields to bait the Emperor into a climactic confrontation. The Emperor, seizing this opportunity, led a desperate assault directly into Horus's flagship, accompanied by his two trusted champions, Sanguinius of the Blood Angels and Rogel Dorn of the Imperial Fists, along with the elite Legio Custodes and a contingent of Sanguinius' own Blood Angels. They wade into the depths of the vengeful spirit. Through chaotic sorcery, however, their teleportation was disrupted, scattering the loyalists across the twisted, demon-haunted halls of Horus's flagship. Amidst the confusion, Sanguinius is quickly isolated by some dark artifice, face to face with his former brother, now arch-enemy. And although he possessed the psychic gift of foresight, Sanguinius understood this encounter would be their last. He had scantly had time to recover any of the strength he had expended upon both of Khorne's mighty warriors. The reason he went so willingly into this doomed confrontation remains shrouded in legend. However, it is largely believed that these decisions were those he saw as guaranteeing the best outcome for humanity, seeing his death as necessary to save the Emperor. This battle was so climactic that if observed, it would be etched in the records of Imperial history. As Sanguinius met Horus on the combat deck, and Sanguinius expended every last remaining ounce of his strength, his movements so fast he had become a literal mote of light, necessitating the draw of power from the craven gods that used Horus as a vessel. However, this would not be enough. Sanguinius' efforts were for naught. He could not slay the beast. In one last act of cunning, Horus would offer his brother power and prominence along with eternal life, should he forsake the Emperor. But Sanguinius' unwavering loyalty disallowed this option. He refused, sealing his fate. Enraged by this reaction, Horus attacked, even though Sanguinius was nearly spent from the brutal defense of Terra. For a short while, he was able to match the god-imbued power that Horus had, all through his own unparalleled skill, matching Horus in combat, despite the terrifying strength the War Master drew from. Yet the toll of the prior battles weighed heavily, and the might Horus now commanded was augmented by the chaotic forces beyond the mortal reckoning. When mortal prowess alone could not subdue his opponent, Horus unleashed his psychic powers of destruction. In what would be one of the darkest acts of betrayal, Horus subjected Sanguinius to agonies so profound that they echo and haunt the Blood Angels for millennia. He would beat upon his brother, rending flesh from bone with his own mace. However, no matter how much force he put behind it, no matter the strength of his psychic assault, so saturated with malice that it left prominent scars on Sanguinius' genetic legacy, he could not force his brother to willingly break under his strength. He could not force his brother to bend the knee. When the Emperor finally breached Horus' sanctum, legends tell he found his once beloved son standing triumphantly over the remains of Sanguinius' lifeless, broken body. What followed was the ultimate battle between the Emperor and his corrupted War Master. Though many of the aspects of this duel are now shrouded in legend, one detail remains almost universally accepted. In his arrogance, Horus had left an opening, not a physical one, but one of the mind, an opening forged by the unyielding will of Sanguinius, and torn open by his own father's might. This flaw was enough to separate Horus from the gods, and allowed the Emperor to strike a final decisive blow, ending Horus' rebellion, but unfortunately suffering grievous wounds himself. To this day, the Blood Angels and much of the galaxy reveres their Primarch as the greatest of all, a martyr whose ultimate sacrifice would allow the Emperor to secure victory over the traitorous Horus. It is said that without Sanguinius, the Emperor could never have prevailed. In their hearts and in their souls, the Blood Angels remain forever bound to that moment, honoring the memory of the angel who faced his death to deliver humanity from the darkness.